Hi, I'm Lou Meyer, and I'm fortunate to be able to interview Sheriff Richard Mack, the founder and creator of Constitutional Sheriffs here in America. Thank you so much for interviewing with us today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My first question for you will be, I have a number of friends that are at the Peace March in Sacramento.
Yeah.
They're supporting the kids who are concerned about the gun violence and the attacks in schools that have occurred. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've seen it, and obviously they're getting well funded, and there's supposed to be about 500,000 of these students marching in Washington, D.C. today. And I'm really saddened by most of it because it seems to be based on ignorance and a knee-jerk reaction, and that these students are not actually learning what they're supposed to learn about American ideals. First of all, the law requires the government to uphold and defend my right to keep and bear arms. I don't think the students have learned this. They're acting like the Second Amendment is secondary to their fears and concerns. Well, that has a twofold problem. It's a double-edged sword because, one, they're not understanding the law that my right to keep and bear arms is sacrosanct. And it should be upheld by every politician in this country, every leader. Even the Democrats should be upholding and defending my right to keep and bear arms. They swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, both of the state and of the federal government. I'm really worried that the children have not learned what this law means, and that government's only role is to make sure my right and your right and their right to keep and bear arms is never infringed. That's government's only role regarding the right to keep and bear arms or guns. In keeping with that, have these students learned from history? First of all, if you take the history of gun control throughout the world in the last 200 or 300 years, you've seen that governments have used disarmament tactics to enslave or to commit genocides. Hitler, Lenin, Stalin, Castro, Pol Pot, all gun control fanatics, and issued gun control laws and promised that everybody would be safer if we had gun control. That's been the same way it was even back when King George III tried to take guns away from the colonists, and it started the Revolutionary War. That's exactly what happened at Lexington Concord, is that they were there, the Redcoats were there to confiscate arsenals and guns from the colonists to make sure they couldn't defend themselves from the Redcoats. It started, literally started the Revolutionary War. So I'm really concerned that these students are just doing a knee-jerk reaction to their fears, to this horrible incident. Believe me, I hate school violence and I hate violence. I have never advocated violence. But a strong defense to any of these would be very, I think, effective. First of all, what do we know about all of these shooting situations? We know that as soon as the police arrive, or that somebody with a gun arrives, the suspects, these thug cowards, either give up or they shoot themselves. What we want is for that to happen sooner, not later. And what are the students supposed to do? I've asked this question to liberals and gun control fanatics all over the country. What are the students supposed to do during the 5 to 10 minutes that it takes the SWAT team to get there, or even an officer? What are they supposed to do? Hide, run, throw rocks? We actually have somebody proposing throwing rocks now. Another proposal was to throw books at the shooter. And this kind of nonsense that will, you don't bring rocks to a gunfight, you don't bring books to a gunfight. And so why not have, such as I teach high school now, I'm also a former school resource officer, retired officer and sheriff. Why would I not be able to access a weapon and defend the students in my school until the cops get there? Why not? We also have former military as teachers in our school. Why not? He's more trained than I am. He's former special ops. Why wouldn't we have Dr. Mike defending these children, and me defending these children, and any other teacher who wants to be adequately trained? We have a sheriff offering this training to teachers in Ohio, and the classes filled up so quickly he had to open up more classes. So yes, let's defend these children but let's also teach these children the truth about the Second Amendment, the law, and the sordid history of gun control. It has never been to make people safer. And these laws have not made you safe, and you children and you students who believe that gun control is going to make you safer, you have been lied to. I want to sit down and talk with all of you, but let's be real and let's not shout each other down, and let's be honest and open about the law and the history and what we can do now to really provide effective and adequate safety for our schools and our children.
What do you think about the regulation of like assault rifles and those other kinds of things? What, you know,
Well, we've had those before, and we've had them a lot. And we've had background checks since, well, California's had background checks for like the last 25 years, way before the Brady Bill was promulgated in 1994. That's the one I sued over because Clinton really was lying about the Brady Bill, and he did. But he promised every time we have gun control laws, and we already have over 20,000 gun control laws in America, every time politicians pass these laws, they promised our students that they would be safer. Background checks have not kept you safer. Gun control laws have not kept you safer. Bans on assault rifles have not kept you safer. And this is a real good one. Gun-free zone laws have not kept you safer. What a joke. Haven't you students seen the fallacy of these laws? How stupid they are and how much of a failure they've been? Why don't we examine that instead of saying, well, if we could just have more gun control laws and ban AR-15s, then we're all going to be safer. You're not going to be safer, and people are lying to you.
wow. My next question would be, Judge Antonin Scalia stated that the Second Amendment rights are not unlimited. Do you agree with that? And if so, what are the limitations?
Well, I'd like to know how he qualified that. Just to say that the Second Amendment is not an unlimited power or right to keep and bear arms. Well, I could say that too. First of all, I do not want violent felons getting guns, but usually the problem with violent felons getting guns is that they didn't stay their entire term in prison when we first got them, or we're not giving strict enough prison sentences to these people. The one that I come up with is in Petaluma, California. Polly Klaas was murdered by someone who only spent half the time he was supposed to in prison. That happened right here in Petaluma, California. And then he gets out and he kills Polly Klaas at her birthday party. So this time he got rid of the evidence. This was government's failure not to protect that girl. It wasn't a gun problem. It was government failing to keep violent felons in prison once they get them. That is a huge problem. And the problem with crime in America is recidivism. The repeat offender is the problem. And when we keep letting these people repeat, it's our fault. It's not the gun's fault. In Parkland, California, Parkland, Florida, when they had the shooting at the school, it was a systemic failure. The FBI failed and refused to go after the complaints about this thug shooter and this coward and this psycho. It was 39 times that the Broward County Sheriff's Office failed to act and take care of this kid, the numerous times they were called on his violent acts. And so why would we blame the gun and think for a moment that gun control is going to make us safer? So Justice Scalia, he was a great man, God rest his soul, but I do believe too that we're not supposed to have atomic weapons in our backyards. We're not supposed to have jet airplanes with machine guns, 50 cal machine guns on them. We're not supposed to have Sherman tanks in our backyard. But when we read and understand what the Founding Fathers said about the Second Amendment, it was guns that we can keep and bear. And they were for self-defense. But the ultimate purpose of the Second Amendment was to always make sure that we the people are in charge of this government. If we were disarmed, we would never have the final say. We are the final say in this government. We bestow all power and authority in this government. And thus, if we must ever revolt again, as we did in 1776, we must maintain the power to do so and the capability to do so, which means a well-regulated citizenry. And we are the militia that the Second Amendment is referencing when it says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. So Justice Scalia was probably correct, although I would like to have heard the rest of how he qualified his statement. But yeah, it's not unlimited, but it sure doesn't give the authority to government to come into our homes and to our cities and states and say, you can't have this gun, or you can't have this ammunition, or you can't have this magazine, or you can't have this mean gun. So we only want people to get killed with nice guns. And what an absurdity. And this thing has gotten so absurd over and over and over. And for the children of Parkland, Florida, or anywhere else in this country to believe that gun control is somehow going to make them safer, you students have been lied to. And if you believe that, you're believing a propaganda scheme that was used over and over the last 150 years throughout the world.
Thank you so much. Sheriff
All right.
Richard Mack.